All right. We are going to get started now, and I'm sure folks will continue to roll in as we go, but it is 5 o'clock. So thank you everyone so much for being here. My name is Danielle Goldman, and I am co-founder and executive director of Open Avenues Foundation and CEO of the Build Fellowship. We're going to talk a little bit more about what those are as we go, but our goal here at the Build Fellowship by Open Avenues is to create pathways for foreign talent to succeed in the US, to be able to build in the US. And I am so excited to be here with Klug Law Firm and Erkan Deniz, who has both the law firm and Erkan are builders who are problem solving for foreign nationals or are foreign national himself. So Erkan, thank you for being here with us. We have so much knowledge in this room and in this panel right now. I can't wait to ask everybody questions here about ways that companies are problem solving today, given the fact that we have an unbelievably restrictive immigration system. And how Erkan, as a foreign national, actually navigated that on his own and or with Noah's help, and figured out how to stay here and build here. And we are going to dive in. So, as I said, Open Avenues Foundation started about 6 years ago as a foundation that has a cap exempt H-1B solution and a specific unique visa solution for foreign talent. But as we've built out the Build Fellowship program and everything that we run as an organization, we continue to cultivate various solutions and bring problem solvers to the table to make sure that foreign nationals are able to build here and continue to thrive. I grew up with an immigration attorney as a father, so I've always been surrounded by immigration law for as long as I can personally remember. So I totally nerd out on all things immigration and finding new solutions, and we have awesome problem solvers here to talk with me about those solutions. So I am going to turn it over to Noah, Cheryl, and Jonathan from Klug to introduce themselves. Noah, if you could start and just tell us more about the firm, what your focus is, and a little bit about yourself, that would be awesome.
Sure. It's so wonderful to be here, Danielle, and really excited about doing this webinar together. So we're Klug Law Firm. We've been around for around 6.5 years. We have offices in New York City, Atlanta, and Houston. I personally have been practicing exclusively business immigration law for around 17 years. Started out my career with the government, with the U.S. Department of Justice and one of their immigration agencies through the Attorney General's Honors Program, and then pretty quickly went into the private sector and was an attorney for around 10 years at one of the largest business immigration firms prior to starting Klug Law Firm 6.5 years ago. And at Klug Law Firm, we focus on doing things a little bit differently than some of the larger firms. We focus on quality, firstly, quality of legal work, only the highest quality in every single case that we prepare, number one. Number two, exceptional client service. We're very responsive. We always get back to our clients right away. And thirdly, what we call our caring approach. And that's what we view as kind of our secret sauce. Everybody we hire, all the attorneys and paralegals, we've been fortunate to build up a really fantastic team over the years, are all individuals that not only have those great legal skills and abilities to be able to do that high quality legal work, but also are caring, nice, great people. And that's what we feel, is the magic combination.
That's huge. So important. Cool. Cheryl, Jonathan, will you introduce yourselves?
I can go. I'm Cheryl Geyser and have a pretty similar background to Noah. Have been practicing immigration law since 2001. I've worked in nonprofits though, and also corporate immigration law firms. And so I've had a lot of different exposure to various scenarios. So I do have a little bit of a tendency to be more creative than cookie cutter, like Noah said. So I fit in nicely here, and just excited to be here and to share and provide some feedback today.
Awesome. Yeah, the variety of experiences in different industries is so helpful when it comes to immigration and thinking creatively. So that's amazing, Cheryl. Thanks. Jonathan?
My name is Jonathan Hammond. I'm the senior law clerk at Klug Law Firm. I've been working in immigration for about 12 years now. My background includes working with nonprofits, with higher education, food and beverage industry, and retail management. And then I went back to school, got my law degree, and now working in immigration. So I think that's one of the benefits that Noah, Cheryl, and I bring to the team is we have this diverse background, and that allows us with a lot of variety of knowledge and opportunities that we can kind of bring to the cases. And so you don't have that cookie cutter that Cheryl was talking about.
So important. I love those 3 pillars. Klug team, that's amazing. And obviously the caring approach is so key when it comes to immigration, because it's all about trust and it's all about relationship building. And Erkan, that really nicely relays into what you are here today to talk about, which is your experience as well working with Klug Law. So I would love to have you introduce yourself next.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, for having me too for this round. It's a really exciting, and Erkan Danis. I'm the CEO and owner and founder of AMEC Consulting and several other companies, which we might get into maybe later if we have time. I'm working in the automotive industry since I'm 16. I'm 45 years old now. In the vehicle testing industry specifically, I'm working since 2011, and then I had the opportunity to work for a company in Germany from 2014 to 2018, where I had the opportunity to move to the US. And that's when, the visa sponsorship took place because of working for a service supplier that is in the US with a different type of visa that I got back then in 2018. So we moved in 2018 to the US, here to Minneapolis, worked for a company, for a service provider as well. And then in 2019, all of the people got laid off, myself included. And and then the idea or the solution is to somehow stay in the country, because we wanted to stay here, because we left Germany as a German citizen, obviously, and then to live here, to work here in the US. And the only 2 options that I had back then was either find a company that is willing to sponsor my visa. And this company, Noah, correct me if I'm wrong, and if I remember right, this company should have been at least 50% owned by a German citizen that is willing to sponsor my visa, right?
Right.
And I remember back then, it was, I mean, obviously we tried it with 2 little kids, stay in the country. And there's this 90 days window to stay in the country, and having the sponsorship from that company was very difficult to find. Not only to find a 50% owned by a German citizen, a company to work for in the same field, because I want to work in the automotive industry. So I cannot cook. I cannot be a cook. So that's why, it's an interesting, but this is the focus that I had. And the second option was having an own company. So having an own company means I would have to have the E2 visa to be able to, to start a business. And then that's where Noah came in, and we started the whole process of having this. And as you can see in the bullet points, the very difficult part with this is, for the investor treaty visa, is that you have to have some sort of investments, obviously, in terms of software, equipment, tools, plus obviously have people on payroll for a certain time to showcase that this is a real business in the US. And after that, started the whole process and got the visa to it.
Yeah.
So
and it-
you are, go ahead, Noah.
I was saying it was a great win, you know, because Urke was in a tough spot. And he says Noah, but it's, you know, it's really the whole firm and team. But, and also, and a correction, the previous slide said former, AMEC is a former client. It's AMEC's a present, very much a
Present
present.
client. Yeah.
And we're fortunate to have an ongoing relationship with them. But yeah, no, it was
Yeah.
just a great win for Urke because he was in a tough spot. You know, he was sponsored on an E2, and then the layoffs occurred. And then he just jumped right in with, like you said, the doer mindset.
Yeah.
Founded his company, you know, which is, I think, something that he was considering, correct me if I'm wrong, Urke, but, you know, had been thinking about doing for a while anyway. And then got the E2 as a principal investor, E2. And then now he's built up the company. He can, you know, tell you more about that and what a success story it's been with AMEC. You also should connect with him on LinkedIn and other social media to see his amazing videos he does. But yeah, it's a great success story, and you know, they're really getting huge now. And now he's sponsoring
Yes.
international employees on E2s and H1Bs and other.
Incredible.
We're going to talk about later.
It's
Yes.
incredible. It's full circle, Erkan. And you know, when we had you create this slide, we said summarize your experience and who you are in one slide, and you wrote doer mindset, and you wrote some of the challenges that you faced.
Yeah.
You wrote that you had a language barrier, that you had to navigate the immigration process. And we
Right.
see, and the Klug team knows this time and time again, that foreign nationals at a greater pace than Americans are starting companies proportionate to the number of folks in the US. What is it, Erkan, that drove you? What is it? How did you develop that doer mindset? And why do you think that is a theme with foreign nationals in the United States?
I can only tell about my situation. For me, it was, I mean, it was not planned to build an own company, so to establish a business, because we came here for a company as an employee. And after layoff, I mean, the two options being, again, an employee for a different company, which didn't work out because of the visa situation, not being able to find a company that is willing to sponsor. And the second is to create an own company, to build a business. So that was not my plan. The fear with two little kids, somehow surviving in the US made me or my family as a whole to work as hard as I can, obviously, you know, reach out to people. And, you know, within those period in the past, which I worked in the industry, I mean, before I came to the US, I worked for a company which was like kind of like global. And even before that service supplier, the other company that I worked for, I worked in Brazil, in Russia, in China, in Europe, Turkey, US as well. So I gained not only the experience with that, also, you know, the connections to some of the customers, obviously, back then. And then again, back to the trusting that you guys said, like, the companies or the clients or the customers wants to work with people that they know and that they trust. And we had this experience. We had some crossovers in different projects. And I reached out to them, hey, I'm in this position right now and we want to stay in the US. How does it look? Do you have any projects for us? So like basic like phone call. And the fear of with two little kids in the foreign country being there was very difficult. And that's why, you know, the drive was more of a topic. The other thing is when we had this 90 days window back then, I remember in 2019, where we start the filing, start the business license and all that, and, you know, payroll, and start to reach out for customers. We had a small project in Italy somewhere around the end of 2019, but we needed to leave the country because we still didn't have any enough of investments, and obviously not really projects that would generate the invest in order to get approval for the E2 visa. That's why we moved out again in 2019. So after a year from the US, we flew out to Turkey to a family base, because, you know, having the background and support, it's always important somehow. Germany was not an option because back then it felt like failure. because of, moving out to the US, and after a year, got laid off and then go back to Germany. No, let's go
Yeah.
back to Turkey and start really like 100% work on the own business. And then COVID hit 2020. And somehow we got a project, a huge project for us back then when we started that, but we couldn't travel to the US because, and everyone knows, all of the airports, got blocked, no flights to nowhere, basically. Facing that issue as well, running a business in the US from Turkey with time difference and not being there to operate the team.
Right.
Was very challenging. We could travel at a certain point where the how do you say, where you were able to fly out again, but it was like on ESTA, just for meetings. So I am not allowed to work in the US, obviously, and I did not. So the thing is that on ESTA, I'm always like, was there for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks to meet the team at least.
So I'm hearing.
So that was very challenging.
Yeah, it's so challenging, and COVID did not help anything. I'm sure there's some crazy stories from Klug about COVID and how things went for different clients. I certainly have a fair share of my own, but I'm hearing overarching themes of family, of working so that you don't fail, and failure is going home, and opportunity, right? You clearly were you put yourself out of your comfort zone and come to the US so much, you are forced to sink or swim. And in that, with that decision in front of you, you chose to put everything you had into
Yes.
making this work. And my question is, because Noah and team have said that one of their main goals is to create that trust. And you made big life changes. I mean, you were starting a company, you made choices that were driven by immigration for your life, and for your career. How did you know to trust Noah and team? Because so many foreign nationals that we talk to are struggling to figure out how to choose an immigration attorney and what to look for in a good immigration attorney. And it seems to me like you made an awesome choice. You're in a great place now as you sit in your office here in the US. So what did you look for, and what did Noah and Jonathan and Cheryl show you over time that was a good sign that they were strong attorneys for you?
So 2 things. First of all, at some point, you just need to just trust the process. Somehow you just need to start somewhere. And I mean, we didn't have that much time back then. I remember that, and it has to go fast before COVID hit. But still, at some point, you just need to, trust your, how do you say? Do you say trust your guts? Like,
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. Then just, just start moving, go ahead. And then with Noah, when I talk to Noah, it's a different energy. It's a different, I don't know, when I see his face and when I talk to him, I feel this trust. So that's why we chose to move forward with Noah. Very easy, very basic. That's the main reason.
Yeah. It's so interesting. The energies matter with attorneys and how you build that relationship. And as we talk about the future of AI and immigration, I can't wait to see how, we think about this. Noah, I'm curious what your thoughts are on, this wasn't even planned, but I just have to ask you because I also think about this all the time. And I know the foreign nationals on the call are receiving many opportunities as they Google immigration help to use different AI tools to actually develop their petitions on their own. And, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of resources out there. What are some of the risks that you see for foreign nationals as they decide to use some of these tools? And how do you see yourself and your firm supporting individuals in this next phase of technology in the immigration space?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that AI can help a lot in terms of the tools that we have. As law firms, or even if it's a tool that a company is using themselves, for companies that handle their immigration themselves in-house, to make the software more robust and just kind of driving efficiencies and, doing things that are, just very process driven and, even with some writing to have AI, help with that, at least as a first draft and that type of thing. But I do not feel, at least at this stage, that AI is a good place to go for answers to immigration law questions. Okay. From what I've seen, with ChatGPT, and some, and some other AI, tools, it's hit or miss. The immigration law system is extremely complex. It really is. I don't think, everybody kind of gives it the credit that it deserves in terms of being a really challenging, area of law.
Yeah.
And it's very nuanced, just very intricate. And on top of that, even with great attorneys and paralegals, sometimes if they're not careful, there can be missteps that occur just because it is such a complex system. You have to be so careful. I mean, even myself, after having done this for 17 years, I'm still double checking things and just kind of confirming things. Not to mention that there's changes all the time, and often there's very nuanced kind of policy changes, and that type of thing. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
my view on that
It
situation.
makes a lot of sense. And double checking and making sure that we capture those nuances in the work that lawyers are doing seems to be the first step, right? Leveraging these tools to make sure that everyone is putting together petitions and giving the best optimal service to foreign nationals as they come to your firm for support. So that makes a lot of sense to me. You're talking about these complexities, you're talking about how challenging this area of the law is. I'm curious for you and, for others on your team, what are the biggest challenges that companies face when they come to you to think about their immigration policies, right? Companies come to you not just for one person. They often are coming to you to say, what do we do about sponsorship for foreign nationals? We have a lot of foreign nationals coming to us, and they're applying for jobs. How do you start to talk about that with companies and help them map out what they should be thinking about when they think of creating an immigration policy?
Cheryl or Jonathan, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I would say one of the common challenges from a company is a lot of times, an HR professional is put into that position and they don't have any knowledge of immigration, and they're getting bombarded with questions from maybe it's, the foreign national population that they already have at their company, or from people who are recruiting for their company and they don't have the answers. And a lot of times, they'll do a Google search and get inaccurate information. I think that's a huge challenge. I think another huge challenge for a lot of businesses is that, early on they may just have the one employee that they need to sponsor, and so they don't develop a holistic plan, immigration plan for their company and what it looks long term, and when do you make exceptions for certain situations. If you have an employee who has a child that's going to age out, do you make an exception of when you can start that sponsorship, and how do you balance what our business needs versus, do you premium process a case just for someone's peace of mind when you know that that's probably going to increase the chance of an RFE, make it, there's higher scrutiny with that, and then you're paying extra money. So when you're trying to manage those finances, is that peace of mind worth it, for the cost, and kind of doing that cost benefit analysis? So I think there's those challenges that are pressed on the company.
So interesting. The mental health component and the productivity of foreign nationals as they navigate immigration also impacts companies' decisions in what they are going to do and move forward with for an immigration path for foreign nationals. So it is an an unintended portion of a decision-making process, which is pretty wild. Cheryl, anything to add there to how you approach decision making with companies when they come to your challenges that they typically face when deciding how to set policies for foreign nationals in general?
I think just, they're balancing the cost of the process with making sure that someone is kind of loyal and committed to the company, and
Yeah.
then trying to time it also around the government processing times, so that they're not overextending themselves financially at the outset by paying for the sponsorship, but then also making sure that they're not getting to a place where all of a sudden they have someone who doesn't have authorization. And that's another cost on the other end, right? And so there's a balancing act of them setting up the policy so that they have a solid structure in place that is clear to their employees and helps us certainly in terms of nudging them when it's time to do with step A, B, or C, and then just kind of keeping the process going and making sure that they're aware of any delays in processing times on the government end and things like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think about immigration as an entire journey, right? There's this whole, it's very, talk about lack of understanding of the process. Many people who are in HR and foreign nationals don't know the difference between a temporary work visa and a green card, employment-based green card. And I think it's really important to map out for anybody who's on the call right now, also, who's either coming from a company or is listening as a foreign national, really what that whole trajectory looks like, and how to start thinking about that whole timeline, right? From student through green card and then citizenship. Noah, it'd be really helpful if you could just briefly give that overview of how companies and foreign nationals can really map out this process in their head of thinking about these phases of immigration, if
Sure.
that's how you think about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, this definitely comes up, regularly. There's two common, pathways to migrating to the U.S. At least in this realm of employment-based immigration that we deal with. So one is, an individual who comes here as a student on an F1 visa, and let's say they go for a 4-year bachelor's program. And then, so they're in F1 status for those 4 years. Then they get at least 1 year of work authorization, OPT work authorization, after they graduate. If they did their degree in STEM field, science, technology, engineering, math, then they can extend that OPT for another 2 years for a total of 3 years. So now they've been here 7 years. And what's key is that during that 3-year, let's say it's a 3-year OPT period, let's say they did a STEM degree, that they are getting entered into the H-1B lottery. Ideally, each of those 3 years, if they're not, selected, in the prior year, to hopefully eventually get selected in the H-1B lottery. But, especially with the number of registrations, that we're seeing, I think it was around 450,000 this year, and last year also around a similar number, at least in terms of unique beneficiaries that entered. Unfortunately, even for those that have been able to enter all 3 years, they don't get selected. And then you need another option, which, Open Avenues, I'm sure we'll speak about, has a great outside the box option. So, I mean, that's one, pathway, F1 to OPT, to H-1B, and then to employer-sponsored green card, including usually the perm labor certification process. And then after they have the green card for 5 years, U.S. citizenship. So that's one common pathway. The other one, at least, again, in this employer-sponsored immigration realm that we work within, is where you have a foreign nationals transfer here from the company's office outside the US. And then they come here on an L1 intracompany transferee visa. And then the pathway, a little bit more straightforward than the previous one, where it's basically they get 7 years if it's an L1A, which is for executives or managers, or 5 years maximum if it's specialized knowledge employees. And the pathway for individuals who want to stay here, past those maximum periods, is for them to, again, get sponsored for a green card by their company. If it's an L1A, oftentimes that will be EB1C, the national green card, where they don't have to, company doesn't have to go through the perm labor certification, makes it a lot faster. But yeah, so it's L1 to green card, and again, after 5 years to citizenship.
Yeah. And we see so many individuals stuck in this OPT period with nowhere to go because of the H-1B lottery. Jonathan, we worked closely with you in the last year to provide a unique option for one of your clients after the lottery. And I'd love for you to speak to that, but I'd really love to hear, when you're talking to a student in OPT and it's expiring, what advice are you giving, and what options are you providing to that student? And Noah outlined, of course, one of them, but I'd love to hear, how you navigate that kind of conversation.
Yeah, part of that conversation, it's critical to make sure that you're involving the employer, that they have an important role to play in that, because that employee might be someone that the company says, you know what, we want them so bad, we're going to start a perm process early for them to kind of help bridge that gap. The other thing is to also look at what are the other alternatives that they have. A lot of times, they'll say, I'm here from Australia. Well, Australians have a little carve out where they don't have to go through the H-1B lottery if they have, their bachelor's degree or equivalency, they can qualify for an E3. So there's some, so someone from Australia, easy option is to do an E3. There's an H-1B1 options, there's TN options, for citizens of Canada or Mexico. So there's a lot of other options to look at.
In the E2, you do a
E2.
lot of Erkins.
Yeah. And then also asking them, hey, what's going on in your private life? As far as, are you dating someone who's a US citizen or a green card holder? And, and a lot of times, when companies come to us, they're focused on employment options, completely not being aware that this foreign national has been dating a US citizen for the 4 years that they were an undergrad, and they just got engaged, because that's not on their radar sometimes. And being open to looking at what are those other options that are available to them, I think is critical. But usually, just exploring what those options are, maybe it's an option of, do you intend to go and get a master's degree? What are those options? What works best for you, given your situation, given your goals in life? It's not, a master's degree is not a goal for everyone, but if that's what gets them to where they want to be, that might be an option that they're willing to consider.
Right. Cheryl, do you advise individuals to do day one CPT? And what is that program for folks who don't know? Because I hear a lot of mixed thoughts on this path post OPT. And I'm curious what your thoughts are, or if you have a policy at Klug, how you advise around that.
So I don't advise around it. I never have, and I don't know if Jonathan or Noah have. If people ask me, it's not an option that I offer up, because it's not really within our services. It's more they then have to go to the school and find all of that through the DSO that they're working with at the school, right? But when they ask me about it, I explain that it's, possible. But at the same time, I know there's a lot of scrutiny around it, and different schools have a lot of scrutiny. just in terms of, are they legitimate institutions of higher education, things of that nature. So I kind of look at it on a case by case. I've had people have success with that kind of workaround, but then, like I said, there's a lot of not so great aspects to it. And so that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's just an element of risk, right? That's what everyone
Agreed.
talks about is it's been scrutinized before by USCIS. So is that something you're willing to take on? Do you want to go get that master's degree, Jonathan, as you said? If
Right.
so, great. Look for one of these programs and potentially take on that risk. And it's legitimate if you really want that degree and you're willing to do the work. So that's definitely something that we think about.
Yeah,
Mhm.
one of the things that I've seen recently with that is a lot of schools, when students come to them and say, "Hey, I'm looking for day one," and the school goes, "No, we're an education institution. That needs to be your focus."
Yeah.
And so a lot of students have been turned away from education institutions because they don't want someone who's only coming just for the employment and not about the education, not about. And so I think a conversation, or at least that I've had with several people recently, is make sure you're approaching the school from the right perspective.
Mm,
Your goal is to get that master's degree. The benefit is they have day one.
totally.
Mhm.
And that's
Very-
a completely different conversation with those universities.
Totally. And I think this is a good moment to also plug and talk about what the Build Fellowship is, because we've worked with Klug Law Firm on this. We're working with Erkan and his company to provide this solution for one of his employees. So it's worth us talking about the cap exempt H-1B option. Noah, if you could just introduce what a cap exempt H-1B is, that would be awesome. And I'll talk a little bit about the program, and Erkan, we can talk about how we're working with you on this.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the many just crazy things about our US immigration system. The main work visa is the H-1B, but yet there's only 65,000 that can be given each year with our workforce of around 150 million. So it's just a very strange thing. I mean, of the many, many strange things about the system. When we're trying to explain it to clients, especially those who are new to the system. And so, as Danielle's saying, there are some organizations that are exempt from this cap, the 65,000 cap. And one type of organization that's exempt is if it is a nonprofit organization that is involved in research. You also have other exemptions for example, a nonprofit that is affiliated with an educational institution. But I believe Open Avenue falls under the first one, right? Yeah.
Nonprofit. It's actually the latter, nonprofit with
affiliated with
universities. Yeah.
And I mean, this solution that Danielle, and I guess probably was your father involved?
Yes.
I mean, it is brilliant. Okay, it's absolutely brilliant. The first time I heard of it, this is just absolutely brilliant. Because basically in the US immigration law, to use this cap exempt option, you can have where the foreign national has a cap exempt. You can have multiple employers. Let me tell you that first, okay, with H-1B. You can have multiple employers as long as each employer files a petition. And if you have an employer that you're working for who's cap exempt, then you can also have another employer who's cap subject. Okay, so basically any company. And then you can work for also while you're also working for the cap exempt. And even if you were not selected in this, in the standard cap. And so, as Danielle said, Open Avenues is cap exempt, and they have this incredible program, that enables companies that meet the requirements and are successful in the rigorous application process with Open Avenues, to have the cap exempt status through Open Avenues, and then also work for another qualifying company as long as they meet their Open Avenues requirements.
The holding of H-1Bs in the US is not so widely known. So I often find myself explaining that piece first. I'm so glad you said it, because you are allowed to hold this part-time H-1B and then a full-time H-1B. And that is the key foundation for why this model works, because you can hold a part-time cap exempt H-1B with one of 4 types of organizations. The 2 that Noah said, the research, nonprofit research institutions, the government research institutions, universities, and nonprofits that are affiliated with universities. And if you work full-time for any of those, awesome, you can be sponsored for cap exempt H-1Bs at any point. But if you work part-time for one of these, you can also be sponsored full-time by your employer. And so for companies, you can have your employees work part-time for some of these organizations if you can find the part-time positions. Now, Jeff Goldman, who's my father, and I built a program that offers part-time positions to foreign nationals to actually train our future workforce at our partner schools. And we're very committed to our workforce development programming, and the fellowship that we run offers these part-time employment opportunities. So we have actually an employee of Erkan's in our program right now. And Erkan, I would love to hear from you. What was your experience trying to navigate this employee situation? I don't know how many, I'd love to hear, do you have many employees that are navigating immigration challenges, or was this one of your first? I mean, you're an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur at this point. How are you navigating dealing with your own employees at this point and their immigration challenges, and how did you land on the Build Fellowship?
To be honest, the Open Avenue Build Fellowship is the first one that we have together with you guys. Super easy to use, like the same with, it's kind of like similar, the process, like everything is like well detailed and laid out in the emails and forms and everything. And obviously the initial calls and introductions and walkthroughs, that's very easy and straightforward. The same with the E2 visa that we are also able, to sponsor, because I'm a German citizen with my own company. I'm able to, or we are as a company able to sponsor e-visas for German experts here in the US. So, and we did this like approval rate 100% so far, until I don't know how many people we had sponsored right now together with Noah. But it's the same. So you get the full service, like everything that came from you guys was very easy to understand, even for me as a foreigner, which is it is a struggle, to be honest. It is, because I mean it's a language that I don't always understand, obviously, because it's like high level, it's for the government, it's for filing the documents. It has to be correct. So again, back to the thing that we had initially. You can make online searches, that's fine, but I want to have a bulletproof for myself and for the employees as well. That's why take a lawyer, take a Build Fellowship for those kind of programs, and it's worth it, of course.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, find the advisors. This is complex stuff, and it's not just for foreign nationals, it's for everybody. And it's navigating, it's a different language. I mean, we joke that it's an alphabet soup, right? With the A's, the O's and the E's and the L's. But it is really a different language, and it's important to have that kind of support. I want to ask you, Erkan, also, because I get this question personally all the time. How do you, as an employer at this point, how do you make decisions of who to sponsor and who is not when to sponsor someone and when to make that investment? What does is it about their contribution, or is it about the way that they present the information and the path forward to you? I know you haven't done this at scale, but when you think about growing, how will you think about this?
It's again the personal and people thing. We feel the connection between the employee and the company, and the attachment to the company, to the project as well. Then I mean we see it, and not only from a performance standpoint during the project. It's also like how I mean for the H-1B, which we started the project together with you, Dan. Yeah, it's like we know this employee since many years now, and we have a really good relationship. Performance is on top notch, and everything is good. So that's why we are willing to invest that. Like obviously the from Germany for the E2 part, it's also like, you know, obviously initial interviews and calls that we have and see, and the resume. When we talk to people, we see, okay, we feel the connection, we know the experience, we know what type of personalities they are, and we are willing to risk it or not. That's basically it.
It's so interesting. It really is about that personal it all comes down to that personal connection
Yes,
and willingness to make
absolutely.
that investment. Noah and team, what about from your angle, you know, when foreign nationals are thinking about sponsorship, do they have better luck at certain kinds of companies? You know, small startups, they're leaving school, they're thinking of where to invest their time. If, you know, you need to build your relationships at some point. So the ideal situation is you're building those relationships while you're in OPT potentially, so that you can go ask for sponsorship. So when foreign nationals are thinking of where to go for OPT and where to get their first job, do you think about the differences in the types of companies that they look at? Do you have clients that are large and small, and how do they approach sponsorship differently? Maybe Cheryl, if you could start there, that would be great.
Well, a lot of the large companies have their systems in place. They've been doing it. They have experience, but that also means that they're not as willing to be creative or to look for other solutions because they are kind of like in the cookie cutter world. Although I do think that the clients who are larger that work with our firm are looking for more creative, you know, representation and services in terms of immigration. So we have brought it up in terms of doing these alternative approaches. I think the smaller companies are kind of the types that are, oh, I have this employee who seems dedicated, who's committed to their job, who we really love. What can we do outside of the box, right? That's my opinion. I think they're a little bit more open to following our lead and just exploring different options because they aren't kind of like set up in terms of like, you know, kind of what I was talking about before, like with this very fine-tuned policy that A has to happen before B happens and then C happens, and not really navigating outside of that. But I think, like I said, we have seen some people, at least when we've suggested this alternative, kind of, you know, perk up and want to know more, you know.
I have the same experience, Cheryl, personally, as I talk about the Open Avenues and Build Fellowship program. The reality is, Erica, and your companies like yours, where you've had the time and the space to invest into relationship building, and people in your company are not disposable. Everyone has a very important role, and that results in more creative strategies from our perspective. You know, and the larger companies that have very stringent policies on what they will and will not do, because they have to have policies because they have thousands and thousands of employees. They're not willing to get really creative with their strategies. That's been my personal experience. But Jonathan, is that in line with what you have found as you've worked with different size companies, or is that just from the Open Avenues perspective?
No, I think that's consistent kind of across the board. You know, even the larger companies, you know, if they have an employee who is overperforming, who's critical to the organization, and they develop that relationship, then they're willing to say, okay, let's go outside the box because we want to make sure this person is taken care of.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you see that a lot more with smaller companies. I think that's why one of the critical things is when you're partnering with a law firm is partner with one from an HR perspective that is looking out for the best interests of of your company.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had a client not too long ago where they wanted to sponsor someone for a green card, but they said, we just don't have it in the budget, but he's an amazing employee. And thankfully, we happened to have, you know, we were also the law firm for this employee's spouse at her job. And so we brought the two companies together and said, hey, because both of them wanted to sponsor Green Card, but both of them, one of them was a small 501c3 company, didn't have a lot of extra money. The other one was a just kind of a slowly growing company. They just didn't have the excess money. And we said, look, what if the two of you kind of split the cost? One pays for the perm, one pays for the 45, because they didn't want to put that onto the foreign national and put that extra expense and hardship on their employees. But that kind of out of the box thinking only occurs when you have a firm that wants to take care of not only the company, but also the employee, the foreign national, and look out for their whole family.
No doubt. AI cannot create a solution like that. That is above and beyond incredible. It's a great story, Jonathan. Erkan, so many people on this call or folks that will listen to this later are thinking about taking this plunge and starting their own company because of an immigration challenge or because it's something that they have always dreamt of doing, but have sort of felt trapped in a certain immigration status at the time. What do you advise to foreign nationals as they start thinking about going off on their own and starting something for themselves?
Get a professional help.
In all elements. Even
In all
outside of
elements.
immigration, I mean, you have to have a lot of grit and it's a massive risk that you're taking on in general.
Yes.
So how do you advise people who are not American citizens, who have to build networks, who have to do a lot to overcome
Right.
in the US? How do you advise other foreign nationals to navigate that?
Again, back to my special situation is we for the E2 visa, investing money into software tools and everything, plus somehow getting a project is a lot of money, and we didn't want to risk that by just doing basic online search. Again, back to the professionals, get you a right lawyer. Everything has to be bulletproof, and we didn't have a second chance, and we don't want to think about plan B. So there has to be only plan A, and we want to go through it. And again, the approval rate, and together with you as well, Danielle, is like that's important for us.
Yeah.
We want to go through this program, and you also give like advice. Obviously, there's not always a 100% chance that everybody's getting the approval from the interview, the embassy. That can always happen because whatever, But the thing is that at least from the filing and documentation side, that everything is like correct, filled out, and everything is like right and documented correctly. That's the most important, and get the help. And again, like your program and Noah's program as well, having the dashboard, like, okay, this is the message that you get. You need to fill out those forms, get it back to us. No, there's a checkbox missing. Please do this correctly, because there's no second chance. If it's getting denied one time, then it's very difficult to get a second chance for applications. So I want to have it bulletproof. That's why I get a professional.
Yeah. Note taken, get professional immigration attorneys because we have to cross T's and dot I's. And professionals across the board probably is have a good lawyer. Find a friend who's a lawyer. I love it. Noah, foreign nationals who are thinking of starting companies, what paths exist for them and how can they start thinking about starting a company? I mean, I think it's not very well known that you actually can do an H-1B as a founder. Can you talk about deciding between an O1, E2, H-1B, and how, for a temporary work visa, at least when starting a company?
Sure, and even OPT.
Yeah.
I think a lot of foreign nationals don't know that either, that they could, have a startup and then have that startup, sponsor their OPT or, even their STEM OPT. We've helped, some foreign nationals to do that, in the past, and it works. H-1B, absolutely. I think USCIS is, a lot more open to that than they used to be. They even have that, in some of their written materials, as a kind of entrepreneur, option. And there's no reason from a legal perspective why a startup would not be able to, sponsor an H-1B. The only thing to be careful about there, though, is the employer-employee distinction. Sorry, I got a little guy here.
Hey,
What's a hug?
look at you.
Can't deny him a hug. It's a good opportunity.
I love it.
That's cool. That's cool.
So the H-1B, the one thing to be careful though is USCIS does want to see that there's a distinct employer and a distinct employee. And so if you have somebody who's starting their own business to sponsor the H-1B and they're 100% owner, then USCIS question, well, who's the employer then? You're the employer and the employer is that. So that's something you have to be careful about, but it is definitely possible. O1 is also possible, but again, you just have to be careful with how you structure it. And of course, make sure that they meet the O1 criteria, which is not so easy. E2, in my opinion, is oftentimes the best option and easiest option for startups. If they are a citizen of one of the, it's actually 80 countries, believe it or not, that have E2 trees with the United States. Worked well for Irken. It works well for lots of foreign nationals and companies. And so, yeah, I mean, E2 would definitely be something that I would probably look at, as one of the first things, in that type of situation with the entrepreneur international.
Totally. Yeah, and we have one question here about transitioning from F1. So, when transitioning from F1, they asked, what's the next best alternative to day one CPT? We talked about those options already. What does that transition look like? Can you talk about change of status versus consular processing and how that works if people are running out of OPT? Cheryl, maybe that you could talk about that.
In terms of the
What does that
transition.
process? Yeah, what does that process look like? You file for a change of status or consular processing.
Well, it just are you talking about like the cap gap period?
Someone was asking, what does that transition after their OPT and transitioning from F1? What does that actual transition look like in terms of just you decide on one of these options, but then what?
Okay, I think the question that they're asking is, what does it look like in terms of the intent? Does it look like you shifted from non-immigrant intent to immigrant intent? And in terms of that, the H-1B is a dual intent status. And so you can have an intent to stay or an intent to return. And so switching over doesn't really impact how that looks unless you travel and then you try to come on your F1 when the H-1B is still going to start. You might have a CBP officer who's scrutinizing that a little bit more, but otherwise, I think that because the H-1B is dual intent, there's not so much of an issue to switch between those.
Awesome. Thank you. Last question before we hop off, everybody. This is a crazy immigration landscape and things are constantly changing. And we have an election coming up in November. Everyone's thinking about this as they think about their next steps in immigration. What advice are you giving right now as a foreign national navigating this, Erkan, for companies navigating these changes, and Klug team for your clients that are trying to navigate how to think about immigration moving forward right now?
To be honest, I didn't thought about it at all.
Yeah.
Because it's an upcoming event, and I don't know if the changes would have an impact on us as a company, and if so, I will reach out to Noah, obviously.
Yeah. So we'll see what Noah says.
Right? So there's no Google search for me. I will call Noah. What do we need to do? Do we need to make any changes or switch over? Whatever it is, I have no idea. So I would, consulate, talk to Noah, obviously. Yeah.
Noah, how are you thinking about the election moving forward, and how are you advising companies? I've heard from a lot of lawyers that companies are coming right now and foreign nationals are coming saying, should I do something now versus wait for potential change in November?
So the first thing that I usually explain is that there have not been any substantive change to U.S. immigration law in around 40 years. It's not, we do not have a nimble, flexible system. For any change to happen, it has to be through legislation that's, passes both houses and then signed by the president. And, it's been over 40 years now. We've been able to get that to happen in a substantive change, because immigration is just such a contentious issue in our country. And it's just so hard to get consensus there. That's the first thing I say. And that usually calms them down a little bit to see, it's not like things can happen like that. The other thing I usually explain is that the good news is we know what a Trump administration would be like, because we had it for 4 years. Okay. And we got through it. And I mean, I'll tell you, in terms of our firm, something we're very proud of is even in the Trump administration, where it seemed like they were kind of pushing the USCIS officers to increase they were almost giving them a quota for denials and RFEs.
Yeah.
Still had a nearly 100% approval rate. There's something we're really proud of. I think it shows the success of our 3 pillars, and that quality of work we put into it, that we were, even during that period. But like I said, I think the good news is at least we know what it's like. And, we were able to handle it then. We'll be able to handle it if it comes back. And we also know what a Biden administration would be like, because we've been in that, over these 4 years. So that I think also can be a big calming. I think that the biggest change would be not in the business immigration realm, but rather in the, in terms of, the individuals who are here, currently without status, and also kind of in terms of the border stuff and that type of thing. I think that's probably where we would see the biggest difference.
Yeah. I think that was- Go ahead. Anything to add? Sorry about that. Awesome. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And really, we've been through this before. And the key, again, comes down to finding the champions who are going to be diligent in any administration about supporting clients with optimal service and really take the care to get people through any process with any administration and any barriers that come. There's a lot of problem solvers out there, and there's a lot of employers like you, Erkan, who are willing to find the problem solvers to support your talent. So really happy to be with this group of problem solvers here. I thank you all for your time. I think it was really helpful for the foreign nationals on this call, or companies on this call, anyone who will watch later, to hear about how you're all thinking about making these decisions and solving the challenges that companies are facing each day and foreign nationals are facing. So thank you again for your time. I hope you have a wonderful evening. My contact information is right in the chat. Noah and team, what is the best way for folks to contact you if they want support?
Info@klugfirm.com. You can email us at that, or go to our website, klugfirm.com, and put in a message there. Or call us at 212-495-9245.
Awesome. You know how to reach them now, and we're also here as well for any support we can provide along your path. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening and take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you. See you.